the heart has a logic that goes well beyond logic. He was concerned about the purity of the teaching. And there were people early on who got very excited about what they were experiencing after 6 months. And they said, oh, I'm a guru now. Think of all the people. We're all tiny pieces of the unity. He or she has a consciousness as big as the universe. What is yourself anyway? And I realized immediately that, this is something I can do for myself. I don't have to go and beg somebody to analyze me or to help me spiritually. Veda is intelligent enough to be adaptable to any time and any place.
Woof woof. Welcome to Kanha Cast. Today I'm speaking to Paul Glosop. Paul is a long-time practitioner of transcendental meditation. He has a background in computers and also the television industry. He currently helps out at the Maharishi International University in Fairfield, Iowa. He also has a keen interest in architecture and Vastu Shastra. Paul was in Kanha Shanti Vanam for the 10,000 for World Peace program. Before the start of this episode, a small request from the Kanha Cast team. Kanha Cast has been nominated for the Hindustan Times Smartcast Mint Podmasters Awards. You can support Kanha Cast by voting on the link shared in the description of this video. Select Self-Help and Motivation in Podcast category and Kanha Cast in the podcast name. Enter your name and email, and that's it. Thank you for your love and support.
So, thank you, Brother Paul. It's wonderful to have you in the Kanha studio. And this is just a chance meeting at the canteen yesterday.
Yes.
And that's when we first met. And
Yes.
The extraordinary Brother Ramakant was with you. And he introduced us and he said, you have to have a conversation with him.
And I didn't realize it was going to be this kind of conversation where it's an interview, but that's perfectly fine because I've worked in television for 10 years in my past life in this life. And I actually work at Maharishi International University as the moderator for some courses in Vedic science.
Wow.
And I think people in India should be very familiar with Veda.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And the extraordinary work that the university does, spreading the Veda and keeping it alive, actually.
Yes.
Because even in India, you say people should be very familiar, but we are getting distant from it with the power of social media and things like that. There is a universality of culture that is happening, where the traditional cultures are getting, neglected. So,
I think there's a perception that there's something too old about Veda, but the essence of Veda is timeless. And that means Veda is intelligent enough to be adaptable to any time and any place. Because Veda, according to my Maharishi, is the constitution of the universe. The Veda is Swayambhu, which, as you know, means self-created. It is not created by any man, woman, or committee. It is there all the time. And how it's perceived is by people of higher consciousness. So, and there are not many of them, but the seers, especially the seers of India, some of them see the Veda, or they see parts of the Veda. And that's how it comes to us, because once they've seen it, they can speak it. And once they can speak it, they can speak it to their children and their children's children, and it becomes a tradition. And that Vedic knowledge in 40 branches supports every aspect of life. And the knowledge is very, very deep. It goes beyond any argument. It is universally applicable.
Okay, so it's not, it doesn't have any cultural context at all. It's just...
No, absolutely no.
Yes.
We only put our own cultural context on it. And then we try, it's also very difficult or impossible to make commentaries. The Veda, Maharishi says, is self-commenting. So and it's very broad. The Vedic, ancient Vedic Sanskrit is like an 8-lane highway with 8 lanes going in each direction, because the meaning is so deep and therefore very broad. Whereas, and I'm just saying this about English, when you English philosopher is like a narrow path in a woodland. It has some direction and it has some meaning, but compared to Veda, nothing is as broad and encompassing as Veda.
Wow.
And this, I don't know why exactly we Westerners are getting it, because Maharishi's probably spent more time in the West than he did in his own, in his home country. And so we heard him over and over and over, educating us wonderfully.
No, and it's very true. A lot of us in the land of the origin of the Veda, we are not that well versed in it, and
Yes.
we're but of course there are some pockets where people are still doing research and are still keeping it alive, but largely it's the newer generation, the youngsters that you meet, they are not really into it that much.
I don't know exactly what we do, except we can only go into ourselves and speak from our own hearts and
Absolutely.
feelings and our knowledge, and be assured that every science finds its source, every branch of knowledge finds its source in Vedic knowledge. It's as if 12 branches of knowledge, 1, 2, 3, 12, if you go deep into them and deep into them and deeper into them, you find they come to one place. But that takes some time and there's 2 values. There's the intellectual value and there's the value of direct experience.
Sure.
Direct experience, in the West, we get tied up in intellectual knots, and those knots are different from different people, and then it causes philosophical arguments. Whereas the best way to look at it is to look at your sense of knowledge, and that person looks at their sense of knowledge, and they say, how can we find the universal basis of our own pieces, our own disciplines? And truth to tell, that is in the Veda, because Veda is timeless. When we go, Veda is still there. When we disappear, Veda is still there for the whole universe. And the whole universe is made of Veda, everything. In fact, I'm going on here, but Maharishi says that the pattern of the human body is Vedic, is the Veda. He says that every organ, every sense corresponds to something in Veda. And so if we only come to know it, we are walking Veda.
That's so beautiful. And you brought up the aspect of the intellect and the experience. There's an intellectual sort of exploration, and there's the experiential knowledge of it.
There's there's direct experience. It's like, you've heard of, you live in the middle of America, you've heard of a mango, and but this was let's say 30 years ago, and you keep hearing about a mango, and it looks like this, and it's got flesh like this, it tastes like this, tastes a bit like a peach, but you've never eaten one. And then finally you get to go somewhere that's more sophisticated and you eat a mango. Now you've got experience, you've got knowledge and experience. It's as simple as that. But both those strokes are essential. And so the university that I help at, everybody practices transcendental meditation, and everybody goes in the familiar disciplines of knowledge. So they meditate twice a day, 20 minutes or whatever, and then they learn physics and chemistry and English and the things that you would normally learn in university. And what that means is that you're not divided from the knowledge. Maharishi speaks of Rishi, and Devata, and Chandas. Those three elements. Rishi is to do with the self. I am the Rishi, not a big Rishi, but I am, this is myself. Chandas is the material value of that makes up everything that we see materially, and Devata is what joins the two together. And the Devatas have the Devatas, you could say, are the laws of nature. Now, Western scientists have this bad habit of trying to take themselves out of the equation of science. They say the human personality is too variable. We can't include it in our studies. So they try to do studies that erase the human value. Now, with that, they're losing a whole 1/3 of science. And not only are they losing 1/3, they're losing that which, when put together, forms the wholeness of oneness. So Maharishi says it's very important not just to understand Rishi, Devata, and Chandas, but to understand the togetherness of the three, the samhita of Rishi, Devata, and Chandas. So now you have 4, and that is wholeness. So in the university, the self gets educated, as it were, by the inner experience, and then the mind gets educated by the conventional means. And that means you grow a balanced self, a balanced personality, as you're experiencing growth in superficial knowledge. It's when I went to university, when I went to high school in the UK, it was a big 0.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing that satisfied that inner yearning for something to know about the self. What is the nature of the self? What is the nature of personal growth? What is the nature of my connection with the universe? Is there such a thing as personal growth? And so I feel very fortunate to have come across TM on the recommendation of a friend when I was 20, and I've been doing it for more than 50 years since.
Wow. And this was, you first came across it when you were in college?
Yes, when I was in university. I was studying electrical engineering. And I would say I came to a crisis point mentally, like many people do when they're that age.
Sure.
If they haven't got a direction open to them that satisfies the deep level of feeling and their natural inner spirituality. There's a lot of growth still going on at the age of 20. And very fortunately, as I say, somebody recommended it to me. And I went off to London at the time because there weren't many teachers of transcendental meditation. My friend in the city of Bath in England said, go to London, knock on this lady's door because I know she meditates. And in those days, you didn't have to telephone. You could just knock on somebody's door. I knocked on her door. She was very kind, let me in. And she said, well, I'll tell you what I know. But in order to learn the meditation practice, this is where our center is in London. Go there and they'll teach you. And it was a 7-step process involving a couple of introductory talks and then initiation into the practice. And then 3 meetings after that, because once you know you have a taste of the meditation, you need a little bit more information because you say, wow, what do I do when can I fall asleep in meditation?
There's so many questions.
There's so many questions, exactly.
Yeah. So was it like, how soon did you realize that this was something that was going to play a huge part in your life? Was it that first meditation, or did it gradually kind of open up to you?
Well, the details opened up gradually.
Yeah.
But, we have something in London called the Tube Station, which is the Underground Railway.
Sure.
And I remember going from the place where I was instructed, walking to the Tube Station, and I was laughing the whole way.
Wow.
And I had been I was a much more serious and old young man than I am now, because I've lost a lot of intellectual weight. And I realized immediately that, this is something I can do for myself. I don't have to go and beg somebody to analyze me or to help me spiritually. Just do this as Maharishi instructs, 20 minutes twice a day. And I got the opportunity to see Maharishi for the first time about 6 months later, which was very, a great opportunity.
Wow. And this was in London?
The next, pardon me?
This was in London as well?
No, he was in Austria,
Okay.
in a small town on the border of Austria called Kösen. And about 1,200 people turned up for that course. Now, that was the second level. I mean, the first level was, as it were, learning to meditate and starting to get released from what we call stresses, that are bound up inside us. And the second level was seeing Maharishi walk on the stage. And we all had notebooks. I was scribbling madly. What I remember was that Maharishi seemed to be addressing me directly, all my questions, one by one, and very humorously and naturally and friendly, and that was experience number 2, and that made me think I have to get even more involved in this. So, skipping forward a bit. I went on a teacher training course, and about halfway through that teacher training course, I was standing in a lobby, and something came over the PA system from the video booth. You know well about video booths and audio control rooms, and it said, "We're looking for somebody to add to the video crew." Well, I happened to be, I was into that door in about 6 seconds, and I met a new friend there, and I said, "It's me, here I am." And to cut a long story short, he said, "Well, I have to ask Maharishi." And Maharishi said, "Okay." And that allowed me to have 5 years on Maharishi's video crew.
Wow.
Which meant I was able to follow him there were 7 of us then. The cameras weren't as good as they are now that you've got here. I turned out to be the audio man for those 5 years. And that was a thrill. We went to America, we went to Italy, I went to Germany, Spain, many, many places, following Maharishi and recording his lectures. And now at this end, that was 1972. What is that? 50 years later, I'm helping the Maharishi archive at the university, and they have some of the tapes that I helped to record. Wow. I think we have 40,000 hours of Maharishi's recordings and tapes.
That's almost like, that was a pioneer time, right? It was almost like you're going into uncharted territory with Maharishi, opening doors.
You couldn't have put it better, yes. He was, I mean, we didn't even, I think before meditation, we didn't even realize that we had consciousness. And we didn't even realize that consciousness was something that could be refined or advanced or expanded. And so there was no science of consciousness. Everything was directed to the outside world. So yes, Maharishi opened many, many doors.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And one thing that is very evident in Maharishi's teachings is that it's empowering the individual, not taking power away from the individual. You are still at the center of your life. Because a lot of young people find that, getting involved with any sort of spiritual thing may mean giving up all your freedom to the guru, and that's it. But
that's a very subtle point. Very subtle, because there's a lot of deep discussion that could go around that point. Because what is yourself anyway? But you have to start where you are. And I think that's, you have to start. I like, a friend said to me recently, and he was semi-joking. He said, you have to imagine your head as big as the universe. And what he meant by that, I think as far as individual consciousness is concerned, we are very much focused on being the center of our own consciousness, and it's kind of a little walnut in the center of our brain somewhere. It's not very big. We look out, that's distant. We hear from a distance. Everything's very distant except what's here. Now, I believe that element of consciousness can expand to be as big as the universe in a very natural way. Then you have a completely different sense of yourself. But while you have the sense of your small self, you have desires, you have wishes, you have a natural structure that needs its fulfillments. If you want a toy, if you want a microphone or a mixer or a camera, you want it. And if you don't get it, with a little bit of a pinch.
Sure.
But when your consciousness is as big as the universe, you own everything. You own everything. Now, so the thing is, if you believe that your teacher Daji or my teacher Maharishi, he or she has a consciousness as big as the universe. Now, if you really, really believe that, then you feel that by holding too much into the level of selfishness or self-directedness or self-concern, you will be slowing down your advancement towards the state that will really be fulfilling. Because when everything is inside you, you're completely fulfilled. So I think then there's it's a decision to be made. Some people say, I really must give up all this materialistic stuff because I can see that there's something very different and very expanded at the end of the road. And other people naturally want to go more gradually because the physiology won't support that level of expansion. So Maharishi has, roughly speaking, divided people into people who are very, very spiritually oriented and householders. And householders are 99% of everybody. And you don't want to go too fast in case you break your knees, once Maharishi once said. So he was very kind, he was very easygoing, and he let people go at their own pace. And my feeling is that you want to go at your own pace because that's the monitor, that's the tick-tock in your brain that says this is my pace. And going at your own pace is the most natural and most comfortable.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. But ever since we are children, we are kind of, all the response that we get from the world around us, from the people around us, kind of is speaking to that consciousness that is limited within this body, the one that has everything is distant from, even this microphone is distant from that consciousness. Yes. So it is a difficult path to kind of, expand it. In that way, in the sense that, it's you put it so beautifully that if your teacher has the consciousness, I mean, you truly believe that encompasses the entire universe. You know that it encompasses you as well, and your limited consciousness or whatever. So for you, was it easy, this path of this expansion from the self that is contained to the much larger self?
What is the path?
No, I'm asking, was it easy to kind of, given your background? Because at 20 years of age, most of us are extremely skeptical as well. And we have
Oh, yes, that's true.
Yeah. So
Yes.
was it easy to welcome this expansion?
Well, the first steps, I mean, I'm not saying that my head is as big as the universe. Let's be honest. Okay. But because this is the path of growing happiness, evolution, that God seems to have set for everyone in mankind. And the story goes that this doesn't usually take one lifetime. So, if you find that you go from A to Z in one lifetime, then you probably already had quite a few previous lifetimes. I'm very comfortable with the idea of lifetimes.
Sure.
So Maharishi had to address the initial problems, where people were uncomfortable because they had bad health, physiologically or mentally. And he had to put a promise out that people felt was reachable. And so he talked about a balanced physiology. And he talked about balanced mental state. And he said, we can show the results of transcendental meditation come to that because we can do scientific measurements on the body. And is the blood pressure going down? Is the aging process slowing? Is the blood chemistry different? And then as far as mental is concerned, he said, are the brain waves showing more synchrony, for instance, which is a side effect of having a calmer, more effective mind, more effective thinking. So he went with what is commonly measurable in science today, and he's very much a supporter of Western science in its ability to measure the parameters, psychological, physical, and sociological, of the effect of the meditation practice. And so there are still many people today doing those studies. I don't know how many scientific studies we have. It could be 1,200, going back to, I think the first ones were in 1972. And they've, as a whole, they very effectively show how the meditation advances the balance in mind and body. And so that was the first thing that Maharishi talked about and asked us as teachers of meditation to talk about. We had a fairly standard introductory talks that would go into the values of meditating for your personal life. And then as you grew, maybe you go to Maharishi lectures at the center, you'd find out, oh, there's quite a lot more to it.
So layers revealing slowly.
Yes, in a natural way.
Beautiful,
yes.
Beautiful. You mentioned earlier that you are not saying that your head is as big as the universe.
Yeah.
But something I find interesting is also that we perhaps should not say that it's not as big as the universe. We shouldn't put that barrier on ourselves that, oh, I'm not capable of that.
Oh, I don't say I'm not capable of it, no. But I don't want to pose.
Sure.
I don't want to pose as something. No, I believe it thoroughly, and I believe I'm going in that direction. The satisfying thing, there's a great satisfaction in motion towards a goal. There's great dissatisfaction in impediment, a big rock in front of you, and you cannot move. So knowing that you can move that rock or out of the way, and you can keep going towards a goal is very encouraging. And I'm not going to worry, because I think nature will take care of that big thing. I can aspire to that, but ultimately how the pace is governed is connected to something very deep that I don't have to. In fact, I don't have to analyze. And I come from the Western tradition with far too much thinking.
Lots of analysis.
Yes, lots of. I want to relate something that I've experienced in the last few days here.
Mhm.
First of all, this is my first time in India.
Really? It's
Yes.
the first time? Wow.
Yes. So I've been in India about 5 days now, 6 days maybe. And it's a thrill because India is so different. I know many Indian people in the West, but actually coming to the country is something in itself. It's that intellectual knowledge versus the experiential knowledge. You have to be here. And one thing I've noticed immediately at Kanha Shanti Vanam is that I can drop my intellectual planning straight line approach, because every day I'm meeting somebody out of the blue, unexpected, that has a helpful forward motion in my life without me having to look for it. And so I'm saying, I don't know quite what to call this, but could call it metaphysical logic, metaphysical order that comes down from an organization that's much, much bigger than simple straight line logic, point after point after point. And that reminds me of something that your organization does. They say that the mind is one thing and can come to a conclusion in an hour or a day or a month by grinding through facts and figures. But they say that the heart can apprehend a solution immediately. So that development of the heart is vital, because we have ways to apprehend things. There's the mind, the heart, and the heart has a logic that goes well beyond logic. So I'm enjoying being in the environment here, and meeting people who have that focus as a direct focus, heartfulness. And I've only met people I've enjoyed so far. It's very wonderful.
That's so beautiful. That's so beautifully put. Thank you for saying that. Also, I wanted to ask you about this event that you are here for, 10,000 for world peace. What is the thought behind this 10,000 for world peace? Because world peace is something that the world could really do with right now as well. It's
going back to that thing about your consciousness being as big as the universe. What it implies is that consciousness is a shared value at its deepest level. There could only be oneness if we share universal consciousness. But we've gotten into bad habits of having I say that means over a period of time, somehow the level of consciousness, of world consciousness, has dropped and it dropped and it dropped and it dropped, until what was left we're a lot of islands of consciousness that don't properly communicate with each other. And that has made the effect of sort of disturbing the superficial values, the balance of life. So when we go deep in our own meditation, we are drawing on the value of universal consciousness. Now, it's not only just consciousness, but that consciousness contains energy, intelligence, and I think maybe even a plan. But we don't have to know what is. But so this effect, when we are doing, so we have, I don't know, 10 or 11,000 people here at your ashram site. And they've all learned transcendental meditation, and they're doing something called the Advanced Siddhi program. Maharishi says that when we meditate together, we have a very good effect. When we meditate individually, we have a very good effect for ourselves. But when we meditate in a group together, that effect is multiplied more than the number of people who are meditating. And so I go back now 40 years ago, exactly 40 years ago, to the first large course like this that I attended, which was in Fairfield, Iowa, USA, where Maharishi has his university campus. And we had 7,000 people practicing the meditation together. And Maharishi said, wherever we have these large numbers, it cools down the atmosphere. It brings back balance. It reduces negative tendencies, not only locally, but for the entire world. And so when he saw the beneficial results of that, he would from time to time set up other groups, maybe not quite so large, that would go to places that were troubled and be maybe on the outskirts of those places or somewhere which is relatively safe. And he'd say to his meditators, now just don't pay any attention to the negativity that's going on, but practice your meditation together. Just do that. That is your job. Nothing else is your job. And so it's called the Maharishi effect, and it's the effect where multiple people are practicing. They're practicing getting to the transcendental value of consciousness together. And so it's like the opposite of an atomic bomb. It's a consciousness. It's a consciousness. I think it's a soothing. It's a soothing balm of consciousness that spreads out. So we know that there are problems in the world. We know that there's roughness in the world. We don't pay attention to that. We meditate in a group. And that's what we're here for. 10,000 people practicing the technique together. And we believe that this is something that was known thousands of years in the past, maybe, but was forgotten. So we're grateful to Maharishi for bringing that to light, because it's the one thing. Carrying a placard in the street, shouting your stress and tension at politicians is nothing, but as powerful as meditating together. And we don't even hold in mind any thoughts about world peace. It's that when we enliven the basic order in consciousness, we're enlivening the value of universal consciousness locally. And so it doesn't even involve saying, please God, bring peace. That's prayer. That's another
Absolutely.
thing. Yes.
Absolutely. That's so beautiful. That's such a beautiful way to approach it, because the traditional way to approach it would be let's rally for world peace. Let's protest.
Yes.
Let's do. And this sort of resonates very much with something that is part of the heartfulness system called cleaning, where the impurities that you want to get rid of, you don't think about them, because if you give them attention, you are strengthening them in a way.
Exactly.
That attention is strengthening them. So you just have the thought that it is leaving, whatever it is. You don't want to say, okay, that bit where I was angry, that is leaving. Because the moment you go back to it, you're kind of strengthening it.
I think that's exactly the same as how we approach what we call stress. And their instructions are given about how to, if you feel that stress is leaving, the stress is stored in the nervous system. When you get very deep rest, deeper than what you get in sleep, stress naturally starts to unwind and release. And so that rest is given to you in our meditation practice. And then you see, it's simple. It's a very simple thing. The mind settles to quieter, more profound levels. It means the mind gets more subtle, more quiet, but more to where the energy of creativity comes from. But that mind settling down because mind and body work together, it has a parallel so that the physiology settles down at the same time. Now, physiology settling down means rest. And the more it settles down, it means deep rest. And deep rest is the antidote to stress. And so stress cannot hold on inside the body. It has to come out.
Mm.
And then we're instructed, if the stress is coming out, how to deal with that. Let it go. It's something you didn't want anyway. As you say, don't give it attention. Let it go. Let it fly away. And then it's gone. And then the nervous system is in a position for more balanced, more natural activity. Activity, what Maharishi says, in accord with the laws of nature. The laws of the laws of nature govern everything. And that is the Devata level of life. Those laws of what scientists think of abstractly as happenstance laws of nature. If you look back in the Vedic tradition, you'll find those same laws of nature, but they looked like beings, and they were dressed in beautiful clothing. Think of Vishnu and Shiva and Brahma and their consorts. They were majestic laws of nature. Now scientists, because they don't have that vision, they don't have that subtle vision. Now, in the old days, you could converse with the law of nature. Maybe you couldn't. If you couldn't, you'd go to an intermediary.
Sure, yeah.
And you'd say, I want something. And the law of nature is very smart. And you could ask the priest, or you could ask him directly if you had. And the laws of nature are bound to help in those back then. Well, now those same laws of nature are helping us, but we see them abstractly, and we don't. It takes 1,000 laws of nature to make a car. But do we thank the laws of nature that make our car? Not very often. We just think of them the mechanical laws of nature. But in truth, the laws of nature are majestic and beautiful. And they, if we have a good relationship with them, they will very easily help us forward on our path of growth, our path of understanding, because there are millions, billions of laws of nature. Everything has a law of nature underlying it. So, sorry, I don't know if that answers your question, but
no, but it's beautiful. It's beautiful the way you put it, and it's really worth thinking about. Like you even mentioned, there are laws of nature governing us right now as well. I mean,
Yes.
as we record what we are saying through this instrument,
it's absolutely the. I think speech. I think speech gets easier. I think when when the stresses go out of the nervous system becomes more balanced, and what comes out from the human being is going to be more balanced in all its areas. If you're a carpenter, your hands are going to work much better. If you're a sculptor, your hands are going to work much better. If you're a surgeon, your hands are going to move exactly as they should if you're in tune with the laws of nature to help somebody. And I don't know whether have you ever had that experience? Now I'm asking you.
Yes.
Have you ever had that experience where you're doing something and it seems to go by itself?
For sure. Sure.
And you say, how did
it happen?
How did that happen?
You don't recall doing it.
Yes, and it did, and it came out very well. That, I think, is the laws of nature flowing through from the deep level of the nervous system into the physical, the expressed, the fingers, the hands, the speech.
That's so amazing. You spoke of this right at the beginning about the Veda being the unity, that is there. It's governing. It will be there regardless of culture, regardless of anything else.
Yes.
Unity is one of the big things that Daji is pushing also. He says that everybody must get together, including spiritual paths, because there are so many spiritual paths.
Yes.
Which all, at the end of the day, are about helping people. and reaching a certain, increasing awareness, increasing consciousness, lifting the level of consciousness. Yet there's a lot of times where, there is a certain kind of division that this is my path, this is his path, and, never the twain shall meet, and we kind of defend our path and
Yes, that's right.
attack another person's path.
Yes.
Do you think going forward, events like this, the 10,000 for world peace, will help that too, that unity, that get coming together of everybody?
That's a very interesting question. And I'll tell you one thing that I have two analogies. One is the old analogy of the mountain. And there are many paths that lead up to the top of the mountain.
Sure.
Okay. Now, those paths in their starting point are very different. One could be on the north, one could be on the south.
One in Nepal, one in India.
and one in California.
Yes.
So when you start climbing. Now, you're all going in the same direction, but you're on different sides of the mountain. You don't even see each other. Maharishi was very careful about the purity of his teaching. Another analogy he used, he said, if you're going across an ocean in a boat, it's good to stay on that boat. Because if you look across and you see a beautiful golden boat and you think it's better than your boat, you could get confused between boats. And then you look back and you see that the boat you were actually on was made of diamonds. Okay. So he kept very carefully. He was concerned about the purity of the teaching. And there were people early on who got very excited about what they were experiencing after 6 months. And they said, oh, I'm a guru now. And some of them went off and maybe started trying to teach without the benefit of having the tradition of masters behind them. Now, when we teach transcendental meditation, we teach in the name of the tradition of masters, which starts with Narayana and comes down to Brahmananda Saraswati, the Shankaracharya of the north, who was Maharishi's teacher, and then down to Maharishi. And Maharishi has once or twice warned us that if we get some concept of our own and think, well, we should add this to our meditation, and then we'll go out and teach it and we'll make money or something like that. He says that's very inadvisable, because if you teach in the name of the holy tradition of masters, you have them backing you up. You're just an intermediary. They take responsibility for the overall evolution of the person you're teaching. But if you try to teach on your own value, then you become responsible for their evolution. And if you're not very evolved, that could be a blind alley for you for lifetimes ahead, because you've set a person on a path and you're maybe not enlightened, you're not very wise, you're maybe enthusiastic. So that's a bit dangerous. So yeah.
And all those people too would be on that path for, you're taking responsibility for these people.
Yes, personal responsibility. You don't. You want the great teachers of all time, those who have the consciousness as big as the universe, because there's so many turns and twists that you need to be guided through.
Yeah.
So it's best to do what your teacher says, what your master says.
Yeah, because the ego is a funny thing too. It can play up the moment you have, say, a spiritual experience.
Yes,
you suddenly are so excited by it, so intoxicated by it, that you feel, okay, now I've got it, and now I can tell everybody about it. And suddenly people start saying, "Oh, that's brilliant! I never thought of it. Thank you for doing that." And suddenly you start thinking that this is what I've done,
right.
And actually, you become like kind of a one-trick pony, that you just do that same trick again and again and again. And it's just that one intoxicating experience that you had, and you're stuck with that, where there's not this eternal hierarchy of the masters guiding you.
That's right. Yes. So ego is a wonderful subject to discuss by itself.
It would require many episodes.
But generally speaking, I think ego is the thing that keeps us together and it keeps us safe. I mean, our ego tells us not to fall over.
Sure.
We're gifted with an ego that's quite self-centered at the beginning. But when the ego, now there's two kinds of expansion of the ego. There's the sort of swelling ego that says, I'm a great, very rich person, and then I've got great power. But there's the other kind of expansion of the ego. Now, I don't believe in destruction of the ego. I believe in the expansion of the ego to the size of universal ego, cosmic ego. Because you have to have an ego, but with a cosmic ego, you're working for the benefit of the entire universe and all those around you. And what happens is all those around you naturally want to support the old-fashioned things of your eating and your cleaning, and they say, how can he do it? He's a big teacher. We better serve him.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very natural. You then can drop away from the things that were concerning you about money or like that, and you can focus on the big picture. And nature comes in and says, whoa, he's a very good representative of nature. We have to support him in all ways.
Absolutely.
So his ego is a very interesting subject.
So your analogy earlier where you mentioned the boats crossing the ocean, and we are looking at another boat and we're thinking, oh, maybe that's better. And we get on there and we think, oh, but ours was better. Yes. Sometimes you end up with having one foot in one boat and the other in.
It's very uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable. But do you think it's actually working through all these great teachers, all these wonderful traditions? They are all doing the same job?
At one level, yes. But at another level, we have the chandas value of life, which is diversity. And diversity is infinite.
Mm.
So we're in a room, there's no other room like this in the world, possibly even the universe. Every other studio is going to be a bit different and a bit different. So we have to get, so that guidance, yes, it has, you could say at the top level, it's the same. But if you have a live guru, he's got to be an expert in the divisions too, the divisions of the unity, because apparently the unity breaks into tiny pieces. Think of all the books, think of all the people. We're all tiny pieces of the unity. And so there has to be, we have to find the unity in every tiny piece. Now, the guru knows that, every little piece. And he is able to operate through the leaves of a tree or something on the ground that attracts your attention, any aspect, because he sees the wholeness behind the unity. You don't. You're stuck in this, not all the time, but you're stuck in the chandas field of life, which says, the only way I can get out is through that door, and the only way I can get in to see my friend is through another door. I mean, we feel pinched to an extent until we realize that every particle of relative life has unity within it. And in fact, unity has a laugh. It says, I'm unity, but also within me is structure, and also within me is flow, and also within me is apparent division. Millions, billions, infinite divisions that it can make. It says it has great joy in all those divisions. And we get caught up in the divisions. And so part of the path of spiritual growth is finding how the divisions work and how. So we have two directions. We can analyze something into pieces from the wholeness, or we can take all the pieces and synthesize them and bring them back together into one. And those are the two directions of how to deal with knowledge, I think. Analysis and synthesis. And if you have the tools of consciousness, you can go both ways. And then you can see wholeness and division, action and silence.
Absolutely. It's so beautiful. I mean, the analogy that springs to mind is science today. I mean, there are people doing such specialized research on just one thing.
Yes.
Which is, I mean, maybe just one microparticle. Maybe they're just studying the electron for all their lives.
Yes.
And on the other hand, there is people speaking about the grand unified theory.
Yes.
Just the theory for everything. So it's both of them have their place, and it's.
If you do study something that's very, very granular, I mean, so much of our scientific community is studying in fact, Maharishi has said exactly the same thing that you just said. They're studying a very, very, very narrow field of knowledge, and they feel that they're getting more and more of that narrow field of knowledge. It's essential that they have, at the same time, the vast, broad, the total field of knowledge. Because only with the two do you have the full spectrum of knowledge. Only with the two, you know the source and you know the tiny bits at the same time. And that is only what's truly fulfilling. And what did Maharishi say? He said, India is the land of the Veda. And then he went on and he showed us, Veda, it comes in 40 flavors. It's 40 branches of Veda. And there are 4 top-level branches. Rig Veda, of the 4 top levels, Rig Veda is the top of all. And then there's Sama Veda, Yajur Veda, and Atharva Veda. And then all the subsidiary Vedas that we're familiar with, particularly Sthapatya Veda, which deals with how to build a house, Ayurveda, which deals with the body and health. But Maharishi spent hundreds of hours just talking about the beginning of Rig Veda and showing that wholeness is present there in its most compactified form. He said, when we teach the children about Rig Veda starting at a young age, the first lesson is to teach them about the first syllable of the first word of Rig Veda. And he said that first syllable is like that. And he points out that is the sound that is made, the most open sound that a human being can make. And then he points out that what comes next is the most closed sound that a human being can make, which is it closes the voice completely.
Sure.
So he says, and he says, between those two is the whole of the compactified Veda. And because represents infinity and the field of all possibilities, represents, because infinity is the field of all possibilities, it must be the field of the smallest possibility, which he says is the point. And he says so that this first expression of an outpouring of energy in collapses to the tiniest point in G. So it's to G. And he says between those two is the full scope. And he says from there expands the rest of the Rig Veda. And from there expands the 3 major Vedas, Atharva Veda, Sama Veda, and Yajur Veda. And from those 3 expand the other 36 subsidiary Vedas. So we think, it's fairly well known that India has about 30 million documents and commentaries and on Veda. You think of that and you think, it's just too much for me.
I can't manage.
It's too much.
Never. Yeah.
But if you can tell a child that now this is where it starts and it expands from here. In one lesson, they can embrace something that's vast, the start of something. And then if their dharma takes them in a particular Vedic direction, then they can do the expansion. But so they can grasp the wholeness in one lesson, intellectually. Grasping the wholeness experientially is another thing.
Of course.
Yes.
Because
then you have to have very refined consciousness. But we're the beneficiaries of seers who, sitting very, very quietly in an expanded state of consciousness, saw Vedic knowledge. They didn't invent it, they saw it. And so that's how we actually, once they saw it, they could speak it, they could chant it. And then once they could chant it, they can carry it on into their family. And then we who don't see it necessarily yet, then we can hear it and we can get the benefit of it.
That's so beautiful. That is so beautiful. And it's lovely that you don't need to be intellectually overwhelmed with the vastness of the Veda.
Exactly. Yes.
You intellectually, you could, of course, the experiential vastness is something that you will discover, but intellectually, to take that first step, how beautiful you put it. We're out of time because your friend Michael is
Michael's
about to come. We could carry on for another hour and a half, but I think we will definitely sit down again. It's been so beautiful. I mean, thank you so much for doing this. It's been so beautiful. For many of us, it's a first introduction to Maharishi's teachings. So
yes.
It's so beautifully put, and I'm looking forward to sitting down with you again.
Oh, thank you, Rudy. Let me say also how much I appreciate being here, because I mentioned to you that we've been on this one boat going straight forward, and Maharishi didn't necessarily talk about other paths of teaching, because he felt very concentrated on the path that he had got from his master. And but I think when there's a certain, you asked me this question before, I think when there's a certain level of maturity, we see the value of somebody else's path, and we can feel very warm in connecting with them. And neither of us needs to be pulled away from our boat, because we're almost holding hands, going in the same direction, almost so. So it has been a wonderful pleasure for me to be here so far, just a few days. I haven't even seen your gardens, your best gardens yet. But I've met wonderful people who are supportive and who come up to me and say, Jai Gurudev, and they want to, they see my face and say, well, where are you from? What do you do? And it's been a real joy. I had not heard of heartfulness before coming here. So thank you very much. Thank you for being our hosts. Thank you for understanding that we might not be perfect yet, perfect guests, but we're working on it.
You've been wonderful guests, and that picture of holding hands on different boats, that's so beautiful. That's a lovely note to end on, and thank you so much. You have enriched this place with your presence, really. Heartfully, we feel that way. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of KanhaCast. Please follow and subscribe to KanhaCast on Spotify, YouTube, and Instagram. Until next time.
Woof woof.